Welcome back, capital F football fans, to the O&O Sports YouTube channel. Today, we are taking a look at the top 10 Big Ten teams for this upcoming season. Who makes the jump to the top of the conference and who slides down the card? We shall find out, but first, as always, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, and go ahead and leave your top 10 Big Ten teams in the comment section down below. And with that, let's jump into our top 10, starting at 10 with the Iowa Hawkeyes, who I have graded at an 88.5 overall. In 2024, went 8-5 with a 6-3 conference record, which was good for 6th in the Big Ten. And I expect Iowa to be as Iowa as ever. Last year, they did pretty well, played their brand, and went 8-4 in the regular season. So you might be thinking, how are they taking this far of a step back? Well, to put it simply, they face a much harder schedule this year. On the road, face Iowa State, who they got to play at home and lost to last year, Rutgers, Wisconsin, USC, and Nebraska. And at home, they face Indiana, Penn State, Minnesota, Oregon, and Michigan State. And on top of that, they lose a ton of star talent from last year's team. On offense, Caleb Johnson, Luke Lockie, and multiple starting offensive linemen. And on defense, Jay Higgins, Nick Jackson, Sebastian Castro, Quinn Schultz, and Yaya Black. And I do personally really like the addition of Mark Gronowski. He really fits the Iowa system, especially under offensive coordinator Tim Lester. And I also love their ability to develop talent, and I do expect them to be able to replace all of those guys. But my prediction for them in 2025 is going to be 6-6 with a 4-5 conference record, just because I don't think you're going to see a different version of Iowa in 2025, and with what they've lost and the schedule they face, it just doesn't look great for them this season. And at 9, I have the Nebraska Cornhuskers at an 86 overall. Last year went 7-6, broke the losing season record, 3-6 in conference, which was 13th. And we all know the story of year 3 Matt Rule, but this one is shaping up to be one of the most important seasons in Nebraska history this century. They bring in the number 2 overall transfer class in the Big Ten. They give Dylan Raiola, who enters his sophomore season, a ton of more weapons to work with. And he had flashes in 2024, but really struggled with consistency, couldn't deliver as often as you'd like, but he was 19 years old, so it makes sense there. They do, however, lose defensive coordinator Tony White to Florida State, as well as a good chunk of the production from last season on that side of the ball. But they do add some solid pieces in terms of personnel. Former 5-star Williams Nwaneri, pretty tough to say. Marquise Watson Trent from Georgia Southern, who racked up over 100 total tackles last season, just to name a couple of guys. And this year, I predict they go 8-4, 5-4 in conference play. Not necessarily the season that puts the Huskers back at the top of the country, but another great step in the right direction for the Huskers and for Matt Rule, and definitely a great setup for next year, which is year 3 with Dylan Raiola. And at 8, I have the Washington Huskies at an 86.5. Last year, 6-7, 4-5 in conference play, which was 11th. And Jedfish is known for doing things in a hurry. He turned around Arizona, of all teams, in quick fashion in those 3 seasons there. And I have him doing much the same here. The offense they're going to be working with this year looks pretty dangerous. Demond Williams exploded on the scene at quarterback for them last year. I project he will have a great season this year. Jonah Coleman perfectly fits the traditional bell cow running back 1 style of the Big Ten. And they have a sneaky good wide receiver trio to help Demond Williams in Denzel Boston, Omari Evans, and Kevin Green Jr. And on top of that, the additions they make on defense through the portal give this unit a ton of depth. They bring in Arizona stragglers from Jedfish's tenure there, Tai Uiagalelei, the third Uiagalelei brother, and Takario Davis, who are 2 big playmakers. And they strengthen that linebacker group by adding Zari Alexander from UCF and Tariq Al-Yukta. A lot of hard names to pronounce there. And overall, I have them going 8-4, 6-3 in the conference. I think they pull off a couple upsets, mainly against their rival Oregon, just because that offense should be electric, should be able to make big time plays this year with the personnel they have. I like Washington a lot this year, and you should too. And at 7, I have the Illinois Fighting Illini graded out to an 88.5. Last year went 10-3, 6-3 in conference conference play, which was good for 5th. And plenty of people that you will see have them much higher than I do. And I think they're a great overall team. I just think they lack the star talent to really get up there with the upper echelon of teams in the Big Ten. Luke Altmaier is a great quarterback. He is very, very efficient, but he has a definite ceiling, and I do think we saw it last year. And they do have to revamp that D-line this year, which I think they've done to a decent extent. And the defense overall still should be very good, probably a top 5 unit in the Big Ten. And Brett Bielema always has a trick up his sleeve. See the South Carolina Bowl game last year. That was a great game, and he's got something like that in every single matchup. So I'm not ruling out a 9+ win regular season. I am just personally predicting 8-4 with a 6-3 conference record, which is a worse record in the regular season overall, but I don't think they're necessarily a worse team. They're going to be a solid squad, but this year their schedule, especially their road schedule, get increasingly difficult, and I think that's what does them in. And at 6, I have the Indiana Hoosiers graded out to an 88.5. Last year, 11-2, 8-1, really exploded on the scene and finished 3rd in the Big Ten. And while they do lose a solid chunk of production from that squad last year, what they return is nothing to sneeze at all. I want to highlight Fernando Mendoza, the Cal quarterback, and he finished last season with a 68.7% completion percentage, over 3,000 yards, 16 passing touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. And he perfectly fits the mold of a Curt Cignetti quarterback. Really flew under the radar and got snatched up in the transfer portal. And he's going to be super dynamic for this offense, much like Curtis Rourke was last year. And they returned Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper from last year's team, their 2 top wide receivers. And they combined for over 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns last season. They add depth up front on the line and at running back as well. And they return Michael Camaro and D'Angelo Pons, 2 of the best players at their position groups in the Big Ten. And overall, this is still a very, very well-rounded team, and they're capable of making another go for it in the Big Ten. But my question for them is, was it rookie luck? Was that schedule just a little bit easy? Or will Indiana become a force in the Big Ten? And I think they fall somewhere in the middle. I have them going 9-3, 6-3 in the conference. They face a slightly tougher conference schedule, and I still like them to be in the mix come season's end, just probably not as high as they were last year. And into the top 5, I have the Michigan Wolverines at an 89. Last year went 8-5, 5-4 in conference play, which was 7th in the Big Ten. And I can keep it pretty short for my opinions on the Wolverines. They had one real issue in 2024, and that was the passing game. In this offseason, they add the number 1 prospect in the country, quarterback Bryce Underwood, to help fill that gap. And he off the rip should be much better than anything they had last year. And in the bizarre circumstance where he is not, they also bring in Fresno State quarterback Mikey Keene, who should also be way better than anything they had last year. Last season, 70% completion percentage, 2,800 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. And even in that, I predict there will be growing pains for one of these quarterbacks this year. But still, in that circumstance, in my opinion, there is just no way they are as bad as they were last season. Last year, 8.8 yards per completion, which was last in the country. 4.6 yards per play on offense, which was 124th. It would be a difficult task to follow that up with something worse. And I project this defense to be as good as it was last year, or possibly even better. Last year, they were 12th overall in the country, 4th in the Big Ten, and they still have the personnel to be just as good. I have Michigan going 9-3, 7-2 in the conference. Like I said, it's almost impossible to be worse than they were last year, and last year they weren't even that bad, still finished above 500. And I project a major step forward in year 2 under Moore. And at 4, I have the USC Trojans graded out at an 89 overall. Last year, 7-6, 4-5 in conference play, which was good for 10th in the conference. And it feels like every year we're projecting USC to take the leap and become a solid team in the Big Ten. And once again this year, I am falling for the bait. I really think this team takes a step forward this year. And that's because they settled into a groove late in 2024. They ended up winning 4 of their last 6 games after starting the year 3-4. And that had a lot to do with the offense getting behind quarterback Jaden Maiava. I personally am of the belief that this offense will always be better when they have a mobile quarterback, and while Jaden Mayava isn't exactly that, he fits the scheme better than what they had last season. And as for the defense, not quite what you were hoping for when you bring in D'Anton Lynn. Last year, 78th in yards per play, but that is still a huge step up from where they were the season prior. And what they need, and what I am personally expecting, is a much more drastic step up on defense in year 2 under D'Anton Lynn. I have them jumping up inside the top 50 in defense, and I think that's what propels them to a top 5 Big Ten finish. This year, I predict 9-3, 7-2 in conference play. And yes, come season end, when they blow it somehow again, you can come back to this and say you fell for it again. And at 3, I have the Oregon Ducks graded out to a 93.5. Last year, 13-1, undefeated in conference play, and they of course finished first. And I have them taking a small step back with what they've lost on offense, but they still should be very, very good overall. I mean, 3rd in the Big Ten is nothing to sneeze at. Dante Moore's had a year to settle in at Oregon, and I fully expect him to be more than good enough. But he does have very, very big shoes to fill. The last 2 quarterbacks at Oregon were both Heisman candidates. But with that, Oregon does make out like bandits in the portal. They give Dante Moore a ton of weapons and protection to work with this year. On offensive line, they add Isaiah World, Emmanuel Pregnon, and Alex Harkey. And at the skill positions, they add guys like Mekhi Hughes, Malik Benson, and Jamari Johnson to help ease the load for him. And they also have a wrecking ball defense, one of the best from a personnel standpoint in the country. If you want to see my full opinion on Oregon, there should be a title card popping up with my season preview for them. Go check that out. I get into much, much better depth there. But this year, I predict 10-2, 7-2 in conference play. And while I am personally a huge Dante Moore believer, I'm not sure they will be a hyper-efficient offense like they've been the past few years, and I think that's what holds them back this season. And at 2, I have the Penn State Nittany Lions at a 92.5. Last year, 13-3, 8-1 in the conference, which was 2nd. And what an offseason they've had. They replaced Tom Allen with Jim Knowles at defensive coordinator. They retained Andy Kotelnicki. They retained Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, and Katron Allen on offense. And despite that, I still may be shooting a bit under what most people's expectations are for them this year. And that's really saying something about how good they're projected to be, because I still have them finishing 2nd. And the reason I may not be as high overall is because they lose both of their star players from last year, Tyler Warren and Abdul Carter. I think they have the talent to replace those guys and play more team ball this year, but I still think it does have an effect on that squad overall. But with that being said, I still have them making the Big Ten title game as the 2nd overall team and going 11-1, 8-1 in conference play. This would also put them comfortably in the playoff. And in that Big Ten title game, they would be facing a rematch opponent, the number 1 team in the Big Ten that I have this year, the Ohio State Buckeyes, who I have graded at a 91.5. Last year went 14-2, 7-2 in the conference and finished 4th, but still end up winning the national championship. And while I don't think they're the best Big Ten team from a roster or staff standpoint, I think they're absolutely going to be the best team situationally as long as Ryan Day is their head coach. They're led by young veterans Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs, who are potentially the 2 best players in the sport this year. And I think even with the staff turnover, they are more than capable of making it work with the talent they still have. The defense is a big concern. They lose Jim Knowles, obviously, and essentially your entire front 7. But if I've learned anything in Ryan Day's tenure there, they're going to have the line play figured out. And I have them going 10-2 overall, 8-1 in conference play. The Buckeyes finish as your top 10 big team, but stay tuned for conference title picks. I have a feeling I might surprise you there. And with that, thank you for watching. As always, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Leave your top 10 Big Ten teams in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next one.